أوكي، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So we did the whole discussion about وقت الضروري, that for somebody who has the, what is it, زوال المانع, right? زال المانع عنه, right? فأصبح من أهل الفرض, right? She finished her period, he became sane, he reached puberty, right? So now what happens? He's going to pray Asr, Dhuhr and Asr in Asr time, Ada'an, and Maghrib and Isha in Isha time, Ada'an. Okay, and then it says, well, so it says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يُصَلِّ حَتَّى فَاتَ الْوَقْتُ وَهُوَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْفَرْضِ بِعُذْرٍ أَوْ بِغَيْرِ عُذْرٍ لَزِمَهُ الْقَضَاءُ وَالْأَوْلَى أَنْ يَقْضِيَهُ مُرَتَّبًا إلا أن يخشى فوات الحاضرة فيلزمه البداية بها والأولى أن يقضيها على الفور فإن أخرها جاز وقيل وإن فات بغير عذر لزمه قضاؤه على الفور. Okay, so notice the difference here, right? What's different here? What's not mu'tamid in the way he's speaking, Sheikh Musa? So he says, لازمه القضاء والأولى أن يقضيه مرتبا. Is that correct? Is that the madhab? والأولى له أن يقضي مرتبا.
I don't believe so.
So doing qada in order is the madhab, right? And he says
Okay.
إلا أن يخشى فوات الحاضرة. Okay, obviously, so you missed dhuhr sinfully or not sinfully, regardless. بعذر أو بغير عذر, right? It's better for him to do it in order, right? He doesn't have to then. إلا أن يخشى, so that's correct. فيلزم بداية بها, right? Obviously, if it's Asr time and you're about to finish Asr, miss Asr, then obviously you have to pray Asr first. And then he says, وَالْأَوْلَى أَنْ يَقْضِيَ عَلَى الْفَوْرِ. So he's talking about two scenarios. You missed the prayer with the udhr, you missed the prayer without an udhr. وَالْأَوْلَى أَنْ يَقْضِيَهَا عَلى الْفَوْرِ, is that correct? No, it's not. فإن أخرها جاز, right? You can do qada whenever you want. وقيل إن فاتت بعذر بغير عذر لزمه قضاؤها على الفور. He mentions this as قيل here. In reality, this is the asah in the school. Okay? This is the asah in the school. So why is this important for us as طلاب العلم? Is because, uh, number one, why is this not useful? I remember having this discussion with Sheikh Amjad Rashid, and I said, the Tanbih, these books, the books like this, they have things in it that aren't in other places. Okay? Interesting thing Imam Nawawi mentioned, sorry, in the Hashia here, he says al-bidayah, he says lahnun, it's not al-bidayah, right? وصوابه al-buda'ah, right? Wal-bad'ah. You can do al-bad'ah or al-buda'ah, which means to begin something, as opposed to begin, right? Al-bidayah just means the beginning of something, right? Al-ibtida', that's what it means, right? The beginning of something, as opposed to bada'ahu, he began it. وَبَدَأَ بِهِ بُدَاءَةً وَبَدْأَةً. Okay? So here it's a lahan. Right? Anyhow, that's not the point. The point is, I speak to Sheikh Amjad Rashid, and it's like, it's like the late school is so nitpicky and so like tight, right? And so number one, what happens? He says, true, I agree with you. However, try it educationally. Do a university, right? Make a university, do an undergrad, have people study different books, late and old. And yes, while it is true that if you study older books, you'll see the more breadth of the school, but you won't get details. That's not how you study medicine, is it? Right? I'm sure Dr. Sameh, right? Once you
Yeah.
graduated, once you started working in the field, a lot of things that were told to you in a dogmatic way, just like not true at all. Like, oh, we never
True.
do this. It's like, that's not true, right? But is that good pedagogy to show people, well, there's 5 different opinions here, 20 different opinions here. I might be right. That's not how we teach. You do actually teach We do everybody teaches dogmatically. We tell kids, you are doing short division here, but why am I doing short division when I can do long division? Well, why am I doing long division when I can do short division? Why am I doing it in my head when I can do it on a calculator? It's like because that's what we're focusing on now, right? That's what you do. That's what we're focusing on now, right? Would there be a difference between cat with a capital A and a lowercase a? Can I do both? In principle, yes, you can. There's a subtle difference where you've made the cat, a cat, into some kind of like archetype such that it has a thing, right? But now this kid in grade 3 puts a capital C, saying, no, it's a lowercase, a cat, lowercase, right? So when we teach, we simplify. When you simplify, you lose certain things and you gain certain things. As long as you're gaining more than you lose, it's okay. That's how education has to work. So Sheikh Amjad Rashid is like, no, just try it. He taught at university. He's teaching at university. He's a university lecturer. He understands, right? He understands the whole game, right? But the issue is, what is the most important thing? So if you had only studied the Tanbih and you don't know the Mu'tamad, that's a problem, right? So what's more important, Tanbih or what is it called? Yaqut al-Nafis. Yaqut al-Nafis. Much later, much more accurate. It's greater. But there's certain things you miss out in Yaqut al-Nafis that you don't get if you did the Tanbih. So here, for example, you know, it's nice to know what is the mu'tamad, the relied upon position, the asah in the school is if you miss a prayer without an excuse, you have to do qada al-fawr. What does that mean? It means you have to leave your job if you have savings. It means you have to not talk to anybody for like 20 years until you finish your prayers. It means you can't eat beyond the obligatory, you can't sleep beyond the obligatory, you can't talk beyond the obligatory. You just become this prayer machine until you finish your qada prayers. Alhamdulillah, that is the mu'tamad appreciated. Okay? But now when it comes to amal, and when it comes to ifta, right? And ifta and amal, a similar thing, right? How are we going to apply this as useful to know early on as opposed to having to look in the big books? Oh, actually, that's just one opinion, right? That's just one opinion. It's like, oh, there's actually other opinions. And see, even the way that he phrases it here, he says, فَلَهُ أَنْ فَإِنْ أَخَّرَهَا جَازٍ. That's fine. Like, that's what he's mentioning in Tanbih. It's okay. You're not sinful. Which I believe is the position of the Khurasaniyin. Right? I'm pretty sure the Khurasani that this is their position is that yeah, the qada is al tarahi. You can do it whenever. The asah, which is Imam the Imam Nawawi. I don't know if what position Imam Rafi'i holds. Let me just quick check. Um, what Imam Rafi'i states. Where is this? Where is this? Okay. 284. This is also, if you notice in the Reliance of Traveler, Sheikh Noor does not translate the positions of Imam Rafi'i. He intentionally cuts them out. He's like, just tell people the reliable position, that's it. So he was asked, Sheikh Noor wanted to translate Kifayat al-Akhyar. Kifayat al-Akhyar is a very amazing commentary um, on the Matan al-Shuja', and it mentions lots of different opinions. So again, when we in my undergrad, I didn't really do an undergrad, it was kind of like a conversion course. We had to read the whole thing. We weren't tested on it really, uh, but we had to read it, and it's really, really useful. Right? You see different opinions here, different things there. And so basically the study was on Yaqut Nafis and the what's it called? Um, and that was kind of like a general reading. And so anyway, so Sheikh Noor, he wanted to read that, he wanted to translate that in place of Reliance Traveler. He was told not, no, stick to the to the reliance. It's more mu'tamad, and don't translate the things that are not relied upon. Right? That's the position that he was advised to do. But there's pros and cons, right? So if you look, for example, the Hanafi school and the Maliki school, you see this actually quite frequently. Like they'll have this issue. I've seen this in like I think this is in Khalil. So there's a key textbook that they have. They have the issue of praying with najasa on you that you didn't know was there. So they say qawlan mashhuran. There's two relied upon positions. Well, what's the relied upon position then? So they kind of leave it open. So leaving things open is good and it's bad. It's good because it makes the deen easier. It's bad because you don't know what's going on. Like, what do I even do? Right? So anyway, I appreciate it. Right? Doing Tanbih as the very first book in fiqh, not the best thing in the world, but the Tanbih in general. This is actually Imam Nawawi's first book, if you can imagine, right? This is his intro. So, different curricula, different times. This is what this is what they studied, right? This was their kind of first mutton that they did. So anyway, so it says قيل وإن فاتت بغير عذر لزمه قضاؤها على الفور. And so I don't know what Imam Rafi'i says. I can't find it here right now. Just looking at Khatib, he says, um, it just says al-sah. He doesn't mention Imam Rafi'i's position. Wallahu a'lam. But it's important to be aware of these things, right? There is, and I remember Sheikh Amjad, he mentioned this. He said, I said, there's this position, that position. He said, look, Freed, you can find the whole form of dhahib within the Shafi school, right? But there's a difference between it exists in theory, because it's such a vast school, versus it's strong, right? When you have like, oh, this is a strong position. So it is a strong position that you can just do a qada whenever you want. In which case, can you pray Taraweeh? Yes, you can. Can you go on holiday and do whatever you want? Yes, you can, right? So then what do we do is, so a balance in between, right? A balance in between is take it seriously, have a schedule, but don't kill yourself, right? That would be extreme. Like the way that the Shafi'is, the Mu'tamad is explained is basically impossible, right? It would be very difficult for the average person to leave their job. Let's say, mashallah, he has savings, right? Mashallah, he has savings, but it's like, one of these things that Sheikh Amjad again like kind of told me is like there's the fiqh of the Sufi and there's the fiqh of the awam. It's not the same. You got to understand how normal people are. And what do normal people do? You know? So for example, the fiqh of the Sufi, why watching TV? The fiqh of the awam, just make sure you watch appropriate things. You know? There's a difference. So you come along and say it's, I remember once I asked him a question, I said, is it makruh? Is it true that it's makruh? Or is there a qaida that it's makruh to eat anything that may harm you? And he was like talking to me, and then he realized, hang on a minute. He said, Frida, you're going to share this with people. And I was like, yeah. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, people, when you tell people makruh, like that's not an answer you give to the average person. He's like, oh, it's makruh. Like, yeah, I'm going to pause it a second. Things don't work. So I remember SubhanAllah back in 2004, um, having this debate, the Shafis having this debate about alcohol and perfume. And one Shafi said this, and the other Shafi said that, and the other one's like, that's it, I'm going to call Sheikh Abdul Rashid in Yemen right now. And he calls him up, and he's like, Sheikh so-and-so saying this is not the Mu'tamad, da, 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 da. And Sheikh Faraz Rabbani is there, Sheikh Faraz Rabbani Hanafi, right? And he's there, just chill. Sheikh Faraz Rabbani, he always has this attitude. He's always had this attitude. And I don't know who he learned it from exactly, which of his shuyukh, but he just chill, right? He's one of these people where you go to him and you feel calm about the deen. It's not a joke, but you feel calm about the deen. It's not some kind of impossible thing. You don't find the extreme. And so he studied with the Abundis. He studied with what's it called? He studied with uh, Syrian Hanafis, right? He was actually originally Shafi'i. He knows Shafi'i very probably knows Shafi'i better than I do, right? He's scarily intelligent, Sheikh Faraz Rabbani. But it's just chill. Like there's this calm. about him, right? Like, let's find a solution that works, you know? So it's very important like that. Like, you know, even Sheikh Noor Kella, like he said, this is like talking about qada prayers, is like that's the Shafi school, but obviously that's not practical. Like you can't tell people leave your job, you know? You can't tell people you can't talk to your children for the next 5 years, you know? I mean, in principle, right, you're not obliged to speak to your children. It's like it's not gonna work. It's like all I have to do is qada prayer. It's like it's you're gonna go insane, right? So you need to be kind of like serious at the same time, you know that there's debate, right? So seeing a book like this is useful because you see these two pictures. It makes it a bit more broad. But at the same time, if you don't even know what the school is, you don't even know what's going on, it's a problem. Does that make sense, inshallah?
Yes, it does.
Inshallah. Um,
You can see it actually on the face of Sheikh Firaz Rabbani. He has this thing about just looking at the way he talks and the smile on his face. It's just really
yeah.
give you
So
that
this,
feeling that you
you
said
know,
about.
when I worked under him, in Seeker's Guidance, that's what I got in the Q&A, right? It was like, you can't just drop something on somebody. You know, is this a divorce? Yes, bro. You can't just drop things on me, you know? You have to understand where am I? So you say, okay, is this, for example, let's say, for example, by consensus it's divorce. Okay, khalas. Okay, explain to me why would Allah do that to me? You know? Explain what it means. Explain what I should do, as opposed to just drop. You also, so I remember him talking about certain fatwa from certain scholars when the answer is correct, but it's just you don't do that. In your professional capacity, Dr. Samih, right? You work with the patient, you don't just be like, yeah, you got 2 weeks to live. Thank you, next, please. That's like malpractice, right? That's
Mhm.
malpractice. That's not acceptable. You sit down and be like, let's talk, you know. There's some important things to talk about. Would you like your husband to be present? Yes or no? Okay, let's talk. So this is the situation. There's a whole way that you do the thing. You actually play games. Sometimes you pretend you know things that you don't know, right? You're selective with the information that you share. Same thing with the mufti, right? The mufti does not throw everything on the plate. He's guiding you through it. What do you need to know? What do you not need to know? What are your options? What are not your options? Helping you through this, right? As opposed to drop you know. So even Sheikh Hamza Karamani, you're telling me like, Arabic, tajweed, hadith, fiqh, all of this is deen. It's a tool to convey a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not rules. Whenever it turns into rules and you're not using it as just as a way to convey a relationship, right? It doesn't mean anything. It's just pointless, right? So it's very important to, so here, seeing these different opinions, alhamdulillah, there's two ways to see things, right? Some people have to have more options. Some people don't. That's another thing, right? I'm one of these people who like to think, I remember, trying to get my teachers at school. I was training the teachers in Islamic school. Like, look, there's different ways of seeing things, trying to see the different point of view. So then I was like, there's this and like this. So the teacher's like, well, what's the correct position? I said, well, that's the point. And she's like, I don't get it. I'm like, there's more than one way you can look at this. And she's like, oh, like it wasn't nice for her, you know? It wasn't relieving. It was like stressful. Like, you didn't even tell me what to do. You know what I'm saying? So if there's, again, same thing as a doctor, right? There is in
Mhm.
principle another option, but you wouldn't advise it. So why did you put it on the plate? Sometimes you judge the person. Here's the kind of person they really want to take the bull by the horns and they want to do their own thing. You're like, well, it's up to you. There's two options. We can go this and this, but I wouldn't advise that. And other people, why did you even mention it to her? The old lady. You say, look, we think this is the best thing to do. You're careful with your language, you don't lie, but you guide people, right? This is kind of very important thing. So خير. Says والأولى أن يقضيها على الفور فإن أخرها جاز وقيل إن فاتت بغير عذر لزمه قضاؤها على الفور وهو المعتمد ومن نسي صلاة من الخمس ولم يعرف عينها لزمه أن يصلي الخمس صلي الخمس, right? So last Tuesday I missed a prayer. Which prayer did I miss? I don't know. Could it have been Dhuhr? Yes. Could it have been Asr? Yes. Could it be Maghrib, Isha, Fajr? Yes. Okay, خلاص. Right? Then you have to lazimahu and you salli al-khams. because al-yaqeen la yazul bil-shak, right? So this is again dangerous information, right? Rise of Traveler in English. Someone picks it up, clicking through. 20 years ago, did you pray Fajr? I don't know. Oh, okay, great. I have to do qada of everything. Like it mentions that in the English, accessible to the average person with no context. If you doubt whether you prayed a prayer, you have to make it up. And if you don't know which one it was, you have to make up all of those prayers. And you don't know which day, right? And how many. So that's true. But again, people need to be guided through this thing. So this is again for the Salaf. People might object to Sheikh Noor translating Rise Traveler, period. And saying, look, there's a difference. Like right now, there's a barrier, a kind of gentle barrier. There's Arabic, there's what's it called? There's a class time. Even though all of this material is public, it's not really public. Like the general public doesn't come along and read the Tanbih, you know? So there's a kind of like barrier, right? It's not just like everything just out there all the time. And so the Salaf, some of the early Salaf, their approach was we do not write down hadith and you don't write down fatwa. We just teach as humans. Why? Because someone's going to come along and read something crazy. This doesn't work like that. So you need to have this talaqqi. Every single thing is humanized. Every single thing is spiritualized. It's not just facts and statements. It's always in the context, and the way you keep that in the context is human-to-human interaction, right? And obviously that didn't last that long and has problems because you need to record things, but you can see the basis there. Wallahu a'lam. And then you have the problem above that. So you have dealing with awam, like I don't understand my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I don't understand my relationship with ilm. And then you have another third of society, and again, maybe you can comment on this, Dr. Samih, as well, in your world, is dealing with people who have minor mental problems, right? Like OCD, right? So you're dealing with a patient, and it's like the patient is not actually capable of processing information. Have you had that kind of situation?
Absolutely. It's every day.
It's a regular thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I mean, you need their consent sometimes. I need your consent, and I need you to understand the pros and cons, so that there are literally two ways we could do this. Should we go the aggressive route or should we not? Should we do this? Should we do that? These are the pros and the cons. And they're like, and then, for example, and then they go back, and you started on one thing, and then they go back, like, subhanallah, am I dealing with an adult? Like, you're not really dealing with an adult, right? I have one student, it's like, I don't know what to do. It's like, Habibi, I can't help you. Eventually I got to the point, I'm like, look, he's convert. And I'm like, look, can you see like we're going around in circles? And he's like, yeah. I said, do you have this and other things in your life? He says, yes. I said, how's your life like? He's like, yeah, I just stay at home. I can't function. Like he's not able to, he doesn't function as a human being, basically. And so that's like, what did your parents say? His non-Muslim parents. It's like, yeah, they say I need help. Say, look, well, there we go. I'm saying the same thing. It's not a medical issue that you have. It's not a fiqh issue that you have. You have a mental problem, and it's not rare. It's actually very common, and it's almost getting more the case. So I think again, if you like with you can imagine in Dr. Samih's world, the guy comes in. I'm like, oh, is your dad here? And he's like, my dad. I'm like, okay, is your mum here? It's like, my mum. Is your husband here? No. It's like it's just small little pockets of people. So the way that you deal with trauma, or you deal with, it's like there's a family around you, right? Let's think about this together. Let's talk about this together. Let's support. There's no support. So suddenly now that we have to, the taxpayers' money is going into things like, tons of counseling and tons of support and the support nurse and all these people helping them get through things like that. Like, where's the family, right? The same thing with fiqh, right? He used to be a drug addict, and now the family has come together. They've helped him out. He needs to get back on his feet, but there's some issues, maybe crimes he did in the past, maybe prayers, whatever it is, but everyone's coming together. There's a family around you. You take that away, boom. Your problem is not a medical issue, it's not a fiqh issue. It's a societal slash, psychological issue. And now we, as practitioners, whether you like it or not, right? Just the fact that you study fiqh, you become a practitioner of fiqh. People will ask you questions. People will come to you to contextualize, right? And so it's a quite an important thing to understand. Like you are the grand mufti of your side of the room, whether you like it or not. You don't actually have a choice, right? So may Allah protect us all and give us wisdom. Khair.
Good.
So it's nice then for the Talib ilm to be, okay, I just need to know where's the breadth, like what's out there, you know? And then we have, let's say, for example, Azhar. Azhar now will say, oh, there's just a million positions, right? Come out of Azhar, understanding what? Understanding there's just a million positions and everything. So it used to be, let's say, 100 years ago, khalas, you're going to study the Hanafi fiqh, you're going to study these books, this very particular thing, and very accurate and specific knowledge of the Hanafi fiqh or Shafi fiqh. And I'm not sure if they had Maliki fiqh back then, but probably did, right? So it used to be one picture. And then fast forward, now we have this super reaction, which is just everything, you know? Like you go and ask them, oh, did you study Shafi? Yeah. Explain Shafi fiqh, they can't. Or they do it in a very, very loose way. They don't know things really well. They actually know what's going on. They don't actually know the Mu'tamid. And they don't know what the Mu'tamid means. So it's just very nebulous, right? It's like, you know, cancer, I mean, we could do 7 different, it's like, well, you don't understand, like, you just don't understand the basics. They didn't do this, didn't do that. It's just kind of all over the place, right? There's a difference between somebody who's open-minded and somebody who just doesn't know details, period. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just don't know the details. That's how it is. So it's a
This is
problem.
really what's happening now in Al-Azhar, Sheikh Farid?
Yeah, that's what's happening here.
I was
So you
always
say,
wondering like, why there is a certain set of old text that, for example, gets studied in Jordan or Yemen versus the Azhar. It's like,
yeah, so
you know.
you look at the curricula of the past. So
Mhm,
so the thing is basically whenever you do an old book, you are doing it's like imagine for example I get a maths book from 1940s Egypt. That maths book is going to be super hard. That's just how it is, right?
mhm,
Like what they used to do in 1940s, 1950s, 1960s is now what we do in undergrad. But that was high school, you know? Like
mhm,
my lecturer in Arabic, you know, he was the head of Arabic literature, okay? In his high school, he did Animal Farm in English. Like, wow, that's quite difficult, right? For an
mhm,
Arab in, you know, and it's like, yeah, that's what you have to do. Like, you have to know this book in English and be able to comment on it in English. And that was like in 19, who knows what, you know, 1970s, 1980s or something. And so it's like a different standard, right? So the issue is, yes, you can become open-minded, but if you're so unminded, there's no takhassus. You know? So I come along and say, well, you could go to Dr. Sameh and he's going to work on X, but you could also go to this Chinese doctor and you can also do, and it's like, okay, but when you go into that, explain, for example, what would Chinese medicine do to this thing? You don't even know. It's just very nebulous. So so then the standard of education just goes down, right? So it's like specialization, because there's no specialization, there's just no knowledge. So specialization, the accident of specialization is strictness, right?
mhm,
Like the way that you work as a doctor is very strict in the sense that be like, look, you can't eat this, you can't eat this, you can't do this, you can't do that. When we do the operation, it can be A, B, C, or nothing, right? When if
mhm,
I walked in, I can't just like, oh yeah, it's okay, free, yeah, you can just join the team. No, no, you'd be very, very strict. So specialization goes hand in hand with strictness, right? So then we try
mhm,
to make things more lenient, then you just become on an academic level, you just become less specialized, you know? And so like the
mhm,
dean is like, what? Like you come out outside, all you know is Hanafi say that if you touch your wife, it breaks wudu, and Shafi said it doesn't. Sorry, it does, and Hanafi doesn't. It's like, all you know is like, this form of here, this, like, it's very, very superficial. You know, it's like my knowledge of medicine. Like the last time I studied anything close to medicine was like 22 years ago, right? Like in my grade 10, you know, science test. That was like 22 years ago, you know?
mhm,
So like you know, I can talk about amylase, I can talk about digestive system, I can talk about I don't know some things in chemistry, but very superficial, very very superficial. So that's where Azhar is now. So like the person comes out, oh, it's just very superficial. They're religious. There's a ثقافة دينية عامة. There's general اطلاع على التراث الإسلامي, but that's about it. As for can you teach the mutun? No, because there's no تخصص. There's no actual. You don't actually know anything. Right. And if they're lucky, for example, maybe they went to some shuyukh in the in the Azhar itself, right? And while they were doing their undergrad, perhaps they attended some classes, for example, in Tajweed, in Hadith, and they may know some things, but not from the degree. Same thing, University of Jordan. Same thing, Kairouan. Same thing, the default. Like this is the general BA. It's just general, like a general idea, general exposure to things, and you were jack of all trades, master of none. That's how it is, right? So there's this conflict, particularly when you're talking about curriculum. When you're saying what should the grade one students do? Should they, Whereas so like Sheikh Amjad Rashid, for example, is like, okay, this is the BA, everybody has to do this. There's this book. It does not mention many opinions, but it does mention things very accurately. It's very specific, right? And so can you actually master specifics? Law, right? Let's compare fiqh and law. When you study law, you do not study comparative law. You don't do that. Like I'm in England, I am not going to be, I might have one course in comparative law, but otherwise it's like, the law of tort. And this is how it is in, what's it called? English law, right? And this is how this thing works. And this is this thing. And here's this case and here's this case. Like it's very specific. And then when you go into your master's, you can do even more specific, right? In medicine, it's not just general. You don't say, well, there's 5 different 20 ways of doing things, right? It's this, right? You focus on something very specific.
But
So
isn't comparative is more suitable for a diversity, like a
it
community?
is, but the problem that comes with it is Adam at-tamakkun. You don't actually know what you're talking about,
Mm.
right? So that's the case, for example, like, what was I talking about the other day? I was talking about ruku', the had al-ruku' and aqall al-ruku' and sujood al-sahw with somebody. I was doing a whole diagram about different levels of like what's standing, what's ruku', what's min ruku', all this really complex thing about and how that tied in with sujood al-sahw. So then I asked the question to him. I said, do you think I could explain this in the form of dhahib? He says no, because it's too specific. Like you couldn't know all of those specific things in all form of dhahib. It's not possible. So when I study the form of dhahib, everything's just sathi. Everything's just like shakal am.
Mm.
So, and then you can actually have genuine mistakes. So I've seen it. Reliance of Traveler, you'll see Sheikh Noor quotes anything other than Shafi school, put a question mark there.
Mm.
There are mistakes. Even though Sheikh Noor studied Hanafi fiqh, and even though Sheikh Noor gave the Reliance Traveler to Azhar and said, check every single word in English and Arabic, and they said, yes, it's all correct. It's not. Sheikh Abdul Rashid, right? My teacher, he taught comparative fiqh at university for like 20 years, right? He made mistakes. Like anybody teaching comparative fiqh will always make mistakes because it's not a takhassus, right? You, for example, Dr. Sameh, you say, khalas, I'm going to retire. I'm just going to go to, I don't know, I'm going to go to some place, just want to live, and they don't accept, they don't let you want to go to China, right? And they don't
Mhm.
accept you as a doctor. They say, we don't accept your accreditations, whatever, you can't practice in China, but you can teach in a university, teach comparative medicine. So, khalas, yallah, I retired because, son got married in China. I just want to live, tiny salary. I don't care, whatever. So you're just teaching this thing in general, right? At-tibb al-am, right? And you just talk about things in general, the history of medicine, this. Obviously, you know quite a lot because that's your world. But in reality, when you're talking about certain things, you will make mistakes. And the students won't know. They won't know. You'll talk about something, you just drop an idea which is actually wrong because that's not your takhassus. Whenever you like in your world, right? I ask you one question, like, hang on a minute, I need to send you to somebody else because, like, you're doing the operation. Oh, the anesthetist. Sorry, I need to tell him to okay this, And it's like because not my world. Sorry. And it's like I know but it's you understand the idea of takhassus. Like you either know 120% or you don't. Period. So this person who's teaching comparative fiqh, it's going to have mistakes. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf on the blurb, whatever it's called, at the end of the when they so there's some Nancy, some I can't remember her name. There's some lady. She translated the book Al-Fiqh al-Madhahib al-Arba', and he said this is a really nice book and da 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 da. You know, um, even though we all know that nobody knows the form of madhahib. So like when you read a book like that says the form of madhahib say A, B, and C, it's going to be either too general to be practical or actually have inaccuracies in it. Simple as that. Because you can't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, that's the problem. That's why traditionally nobody did that. Traditionally, if you study fiqh, if you study deen, you don't study the 10 qira'at. You study hafs and asim. Notice, right? Like imagine I'm, your son is in an Islamic school and you heard that they're teaching him the 10 qira'at. Like, guys, what the heck are you doing? Sorry. I'm sorry to be rude, but like, what are you doing? My son does not know duha. And he's saying, well, duha, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And then you're going into like qira'at, A'mash, who's not even the 10 qira'at. You're like, what are you doing? You say, focus on focus on the main stuff based on Hafs and Asim. That's what everybody does. Everybody specializes. And then once you've cracked one thing, then you go broader, right? That's what we do, right? Doesn't make any sense. Like, what are you doing? That's not how you teach. So same thing in fiqh, same thing in everything. It's like we specialize and we understand the basics and then we move on to something else. Alternative positions, alternative things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. So again, so that this is a problem with that now, just a teaching and fatwa problem with two groups of people. Somebody who's like, yeah, I'm just a mufti. Like, which mufti? Mufti of what? Like, I'm just a mufti. Okay, fantastic. And I just teach fiqh. Like, if you teach al-fiqh al-am, you're just going to make mistakes all the time. Even if you are pluralistic and even if you value all form of that, you're just going to, that person's going to be doing that, period. Number one. And then number two, the Salafi, same thing. He's going to compare and contrast 3 to 4 opinions that he doesn't understand. You know, it's just like it's like if I was to compare your approach to some operation to somebody else's, I come along and you're like, Fried, I read your comparison. You don't actually understand what I'm talking about. I'm like, oh, okay. That's what's happening. Like you're comparing A and B, and the hadith says this and the hadith says that, and the Rajih has this, and it's like that's not even correct. That's not even what the Shafi say anyway. And they don't mean what you think they're saying. I remember this issue with the word gnome. What does gnome mean? So gnome means one thing for us, it means one thing for the Malikis, it means something else for the Hanabila. Right? So it's quite tricky. The subtlety of what is sleep, right? When you say a gnome, right? So you're going to see, for example, does sleep break wudu or not? It's like I should sit with a Malik and what do you actually mean by gnome? Hanbali, what do you mean by gnome? What do we mean by gnome? Right? It's not the same thing. What do we mean by dhan? There's dhan in a usul book is one thing, dhan in fiqh is something else. So what do we mean by dhan? What do you mean by dhan here? You know? So there is no such thing as reliable fiqh outside of al-dirasa al-madhabiyya. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as reliable fatwa outside of al-fatwa al-madhabi. What does make sense is when you have, for example, al-lajna. We say, look, Hanafis, bring your best Hanafis, bring your best Shafi'is. We have an issue. What should we do? That makes sense, right? What doesn't make sense is everybody is mashi halak, right? Everybody. And then if you have this phrase in Egyptian, Sheikh Sameh, Shughul Hay Allah. I don't know if that exists. That's a
Hayallah.
Yalla, yeah. It's like Yalla, mashi halak, right? Whatever. Shughul Hay Allah is like, Bob's job. Bob, is that Bob's? Not Bob's. Box. What's the phrase we use? A box job? I can't remember the phrase. I forgetting my British English now. I think it's a box job. Like it's just like whatever. Like it's not done by a specialist. Or like when you have a plumber, someone's looking for work, so he says, "Yeah, I'm a plumber." Whenever if there's work, I'll come and do it. He's like, doesn't know what he's doing. And so that's the reality of it. That's the reality of it. خير. So then it says باب الأذان والإقامة سنة في الصلوات المكتوبة وهو أفضل من الإمامة وقيل وهو so which would so it says الأذان والإقامة. It says وهو فرض على كفاية, and uh, that is not the school, is it? فرض كفاية. 1 second, please. وقيل فرض كفاية. From what I remember, uh, that is not correct. 1 second. So I'm just looking in I'm looking in Khatib Shirbini's commentary, and it's not clear there. From what I remember, it is not Farad Kifaya. And let me just double check here. Then
Wait, Afwan,
talking
are
about
we,
the calling the adhan, is it Farad Kifaya or not?
but it says it's Sunnah.
I know, but then it says Waqil Farad Kifaya.
Oh, I understand. I got you now.
And from what I remember, I remember the first position is correct. I just want to double check here 1 second. Okay, so where do you think I'm going to check, Musa? What's my go-to for something like this ibadat?
Um, I, I, well, if you have already checked the shot and that didn't elaborate, then probably, the Minhaj or a
Yeah.
commentary of it.
So I could do that, but that's going to be
Bushra Karim.
a big book.
Oh, Bushra Karim. Yeah, that's a good
Bushra
one.
Kareem, that's what I'm going to do. So Bushra
Yeah, that
Kareem,
makes
I
sense.
travel with Bushra Kareem. Like Bushra Kareem, and I don't travel with Anti-Talibin because it's like 4 volumes, but I travel with Tarashih and Mustafideen. Like these are like things like, oh, I actually need this thing. Yeah, he says, well, asah, أنهما سنة ككفاية للجماعة. So the issue here is here. So here in Bashar al-Karim says, والأصح أنهما سنة كفاية للجماعة. They are sunnah kifaya. كالتسمية على الأكل. If one person says Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that's enough for everybody. If one of the two, husband or wife, says the dua before having intercourse, that's done. If one person in the family, 1 second. I could hear like a bee. Oh, sorry. One person does slaughters, it comes. One person says Yarhamkallah to somebody says Alhamdulillah. One person gives salams. There's 5 people. So a new guy comes along. One of them says Assalamu alaikum, khalas done. The issue is, okay. So the issue is the problem is I'm not mentioning another issue. Is that if we say it's fard kifaya, then every sinful if nobody calls the adhan, right? But it's not true to say that if it's sunnah kifaya, that the government can't arrest people for not doing it. So imagine, for example, there's some village to the south of in Sa'id, okay, really far out somewhere in the middle of southern Egypt. There's this village. It's like 20 miles an hour away from, they're just by themselves. Every now and then the government, sends educators, sends this and that, and they realize these people, nobody's praying. Right? So obviously the group prayer is fard kifaya. So like they go to nobody is at the masjid ever, right? So that's a problem. So that's fard kifaya, right? The praying in a group is fard kifaya. It has to happen somehow, right? There has to be people some people coming together to pray the group prayer. So that's not happening. And then the adhan isn't happening either. So when you say they are fought, meaning the government forces them. The government sends in troops and says, look, there's a mandate, you have to do this. We're going to force you to do that, right? Just like the government force, for example, a school to teach certain things, right? Say a school in California says, yeah, we're going to just teach whatever you want. And you're a government school, you can't just do whatever you want. So yeah, we're going to do whatever we want. You can't do that, right? So so the point is, the reason why we have this debate is, is it true that the government can come in and force people to call the adhan because of the shi'ar of Islam, is the outward kind of symbols of Islam? Yes, right? So here when it says, فإن اتفق أهل بلد على تركه قاتلهم الإمام. Okay, so then does that mean that it's fard then? Because how could they be fought for not doing it and it's only sunnah? You know what I'm saying? The answer is yeah, it's possible. Because one thing is it for themselves as a moral thing is one thing. The other thing is as a surah. The picture is Islam is not applied in this town anymore, which is a problem. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Right now, the way that Khatib explains it here says, فنتفق أهل بلد على تركها أي هذه العبادة قاتله الإمام على هذا القول. Right. So he's saying on this opinion. So he's saying the Imam does not do that. When he say the Imam, meaning the ruler does not do that. Right. But the issue is there's no conflict between saying he does and saying that Sunnah. They're not the same. Right? It's possible that for example, you could be arrested for doing something stupid, right? So, for example, Musa and I, for example, we are standing on the side of the road, slapping each other in the face with fishes. Okay? Could you be arrested for that? Yes, you can. Could you be in prison for that? Yes, you can. Right? You're a professor at someone like Dr. Samih, for example. What is the harm of him doing that? Right? The harm of him doing that is actually great. It's not small, right? So a doctor, a judge, a professor, somebody of significance, right? There's actually a lot of harm in doing stupid things. So it's not even haram, right? You can do stupid things. You can sit there and do stupid things, but you could still be imprisoned for doing stupid things, right? You could be stopped and you can be imprisoned. So that's what's called a ta'zir. So ta'zir is not just for a sin, right? Does that make sense? So he's saying ala hadha al-qawl, assuming that it's fard kifaya, that's why the imam would do that. But they're not necessarily related. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes, sure.
Marriage, right? For example, there's a government survey. Nobody has got married in this whole town for the last 50 years. So the government goes in and be like, what's going on? Like, is this some kind of conspiracy? Is this some kind of medical issue? Like, what's going on? Right? So that doesn't make it fard al-ayn or fard kifaya to get married in the city. But the government might go in there and change things, right? What's going on? Force certain laws and I don't know, whatever it is, right? So there's a difference between what the law might do or force versus what is actually obligatory. He says, well, والأذان تسع عشرة تسع عشرة كلمة الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا. And you cannot add Sayyidina, right? So Sayyidina you can add in the tashahhud, yes or no, debated. Is
Yes.
it sunnah or not? With here you cannot do that. There's قول واحد and you cannot add it. You can't say أشهد أن سيدنا محمد رسول الله. I can't do that. ثم يرجع فيمد صوته فيقول أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. Okay, so here he's talking about something else which is called tarjih. So basically, this is what you do. You say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. So you say it quietly, then you say it aloud. So he's saying basically you say all of these words and then you say it aloud. And I'm not quite sure that's the relative composition. The relative position is you say one and then you don't go through the whole thing. You basically say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, like that, right? So you're saying it quietly to yourself and then you say it aloud. And so ثم يرجع, right? This is called ترجيع. فيمد صوته فيقول so here يمد صوته meaning يرفع صوته, right? فيقول أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد etc. And then حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. فإن yes, you're saying basically you end up saying it all twice, yeah. Maybe you can have a look, Jawad and Musa in Fatah and Bushra Kareem. Have a look, some more details there. I think there's some nuances there, and I don't think it's all agreed upon.
Afwan, Sheikh. I meant like for example when you're saying Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, so then we're repeating that already twice, that word in the adhan.
Yeah,
So
you're
then
saying Yeah, so you're going to say basically you're saying each phrase of the adhan quietly before the next phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Similar to Iqama too, right?
I don't know.
Al-Musallin, and
Okay, so they're going to say it to themselves. That's true, but the issue is, do you do tarjih? Do you do this thing where you say it quietly and then you say the words in the iqama? I don't think so.
no, I mean like the one that's going to do the Iqama, al-Musallin wara'ahu, يقولون that
Yes, they were going to repeat after they repeat what he's saying and they're going to respond
yeah,
to it. Yeah.
yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
Yeah. So it says فإن كان في أذان الصبح قال بعد الحي علتي الصلاة خير من النوم مرتين والإقامة 11 سكون on the sheen كلمة الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله ويستحب أن يرتل الأذان ويدرج الإقامة, right? So when you say يرتل الأذان, as long as you don't do تمطيط. تمطيط is to stretch something that shouldn't be stretched, to extend something that shouldn't be extended. For example, like Allahu Akbar. So is that the mad in Allahu Akbar is mad tabi'i. So you shouldn't say, it's not haram, but you shouldn't say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You don't do that. You say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. Right? So notice that's where with the mudud, right? Out of this sukoon, the hamza, etc., right? Mud, munfasil, whatever. The mudud in tajweed, they apply to the adhan. So doing a mad in the adhan that is not a mad of tajweed is not sunnah, it's makruh. So there's no mad in Allah, Allahu Akbar. There's no mad there. It's just mad tabi'i. Allahu Akbar. So when extending it to 3 counts, whatever, or 2 counts, it's makruh in the Shafi school. Does everybody do it? Yes, right? But that's not sunnah. ويدرج الإقامة, right? So you do it briefly. وتكون الإقامة أخفض صوتا من الأذان. I remember Sheikh Amjad talking about one of his teachers getting really ticked off with him when people doing the Iqamah on the mic. He's saying, what are you doing? The whole point is supposed to be quiet. So why are you using a microphone, right? Maybe there's a maslahah, right? So obviously you should follow as long as it's not wrong, right? You should follow what the board of the masjid or the ministry of religious, whatever they say, you do that, right? Because there is a benefit. Oh, the prayer started, etc. Sometimes the gap, like in Morocco, the gap between the beginning of Dhuhr and the prayer is ages. It's like an hour and a half or something. I remember like I was in the shop, I was like, oh, okay. The adhan I went to the prayer. So I'm sitting down and it's like, it's been like 40 minutes and they still haven't prayed. It's like, yeah, we pray in like another 40 minutes. Like, what? So it could be like that, right? They could. So it's important to know when is the actual prayer, and then like when's the prayer? Is it happening right now or not? I can't see the time, I don't necessarily have the app, so there could be a maslaha shar'iyya in that. So as long as it's not wrong, you could follow it, but the default you wouldn't do that. ويؤذن وأن يؤذن ويقيم على طهارة ويستقبل القبلة فإذا بلغ الحيئلة التفت يمينا وشمالا with your head, not with your shoulders. Okay, you move your head. ولا يستدبر وأن يؤذن على موضع عال ويجعل أصبعيه or إصبعيه في صماخي أذنيه, put your fingers in your ears, right? وأن يكون المؤذن. So this thing about doing adhan with your hands down, I don't know what that is, honestly. I don't know if there's any other form of that here. Maybe somebody could research, ask a Maliki. Not sure. But when you see people calling the adhan with their hands down, I'm not sure what that is. وأن يكون المؤذن حسن الصوت. You should have a nice voice. وألا يقطع الأذان بكلام ولا غيره. وأن يكون من أقرب بأقرباء مؤذني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأن يكون ثقة وأن يقول بعد الفراغ منه اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة والدرجة الرفيعة وبعثه المقام المحمود الذي وعدته يا أرحم الراحمين. So he adds this here يا أرحم الراحمين. الله أعلم. ويستحب لمن سمعه أن يقول كما يقول المؤذن إلا في الحيالة فإنه يقول لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله ويقول في كلمة الإقامة أقامها الله وأدامها ما دامت السماوات والأرض ولا يجوز الأذان إلا مرتبا ولا يجوز قبل دخول الوقت إلا الصبح فإنه يؤذن له بعد النصف الليل وتقيم المرأة ولا تؤذن and it's actually haram. So a woman's voice you can break into 3 categories, right? Or 4 categories, right? So whenever it's with fitna or the fear of fitna, it's going to be haram, right? And we have to be sensitive to this because just like, for example, like, I don't know, people look at things in different ways, right? So we have to be sensitive to these things and be a bit more cautious otherwise. So I remember it's funny, like English, the way the English women speak and the way the American women speak is not the same. Like there's a big difference. So it's like American women, it's like by default flirtatious, right? So for an American, that's like, yeah, she's just talking to me. She's just polite. That's not flirtatious, right? Whereas England, that sounds flirtatious because we're like dead, right? We're like fridges in England, you know, like dead people, you know. So anyway, we're getting to the voice of a woman. We have to be this basically break it into like 3 or 4 sections. Number 1, her normal voice. She's saying, "Hi, Dr. Sameh, I have a question." Right? It's halal unless there's fitna. Right? And her normal voice. Then we have Quran, reciting Quran. So here's a sister reciting the Quran in the presence of Dr. Sameh. Okay, so we're going to say, is this a fitna? No. Okay, then it's makruh. So a woman reciting Quran in the presence of ajanib, this is makruh and not haram, right? But qil haram, right? So there's a position that is haram, but the relied position is makruh, it's not haram. Similarly, a woman singing, she's singing a song. The default, here's a woman singing. You're listening to, what's the name? Kulthum without music in the background. No musical instruments. Just a woman like Kulthum singing. Like most people would not find it attractive. You know what I'm saying? That's not a sexual thing for most people, right? I'm sure they say in Arabic, لِكُلِّ سَاقِطْ لَاقِطْ, right? Everybody for anybody who's not found attractive, somebody will find that person attractive. It's true, but like here's an older lady, a big lady, for example, singing opera. What is it? It's not all over till the fat lady sings, right? So here's an opera lady singing. The default is it's not a fitna, so it's makruh. It is not haram, right? So for just like listening to a woman singing or listening to a woman recite Quran is the same in the school. It's makruh, not haram. And then we have the adhan, and it is haram for her to call the adhan. Now, is it haram for her to listen to call the adhan? I think that's slightly different. But it's haram for her to call the adhan. Why? Because it's the tashabbuh bil rijal, right? And also that it's a da'wah to her, right? It's like, look at me, look at me and repeat what I'm saying. So it's a kind of different kind of thing. So you can imagine, right? You can imagine the fuqaha talking about, let's say, for example, I don't know, like the idea of like, say, for example, you know, looking at a class, a presentation versus a TED talk, like, is this a class? Yes. Okay, khalas, there's a woman teaching, is one thing. Is this a presentation? Yeah. A TED talk, or she's the presenter, there's a bit more liveliness in it. There's a bit more hayawiyya. It's kind of like very borderline. So we have to understand that the default across the madhahib is that there is this general, people are concerned. They're not like, it's not all cool, right? It's not all cool, there's certain situations where things can be different, right? You can imagine, for example, in Dr. Sameh's world, do people flirt? I'm sure they do, right? But there's something about, let's say, the corporate world versus the medicine world. Medicine, we're dealing with someone just throwing up here, we're dealing with an operation. Like, do people flirt while they're operating? I'm sure there's some idiot, surgeon who's like flexing himself and he's flirting with the nurses while he's operating. I'm sure, but the normal like feeling of a of the room when we're talking about life and death and pain and surgery is kind of quite serious, somewhat morbid, somewhat kind of like war zone. You're talking to some lady, like, bro, just talk to her, get the job done. One, two, three. How are you doing, sister? You okay? Do you need water? Yes, no. One, two, three, right? Like my brother's an ER doctor. I can imagine it's like that. You can have problems long term, which are different, right? Like you work with somebody for a long term, that's something else. But just the whole kind of general thing, like, okay. And then there's things like the office. The office is very different, right? The office is genuinely a dangerous place, right? It's a necessary evil. People are going to have office jobs. You're going to work with people. um, Things happen. It's not ideal at all, right? And it can be very flirtatious, right? It can be also like how people dress, what kind of environment, you know. I went for a job interview once, and it was kind of like they're all like it's all kind of a young thing, and start kind of being cool, and it's like it comes out of a cafe, and I'm like, it's like it's just the environment. It's like they're marketing to a certain kind of people for a certain kind of thing, and it's just not really healthy at all, right? So we do have to be. So the idea that it's all cool and fine, it's not. That's not true. Like it isn't all cool and fine, right? Um, we should be careful, right? Sheikh, who is it? Sheikh Hassan al-Hindi, right? One of Sheikh Faraz al-Rabbani's teachers. He's blind, okay? So he's blind. He has two wives. And when he teaches women, this is how it works. He sits there in the class. There is a curtain between him and the women, even though he's blind. And his wife reads the text and he explains. So he can't hear the women, he can't see the women, and the women can't see him. You know? So is that strict? Is that appropriate, particularly for American, or depending on certain things? Maybe not. But that's a standard. You know, I you know I so it's not all cool, right? Somebody who thinks it's all cool is not aware of themselves. Sometimes also we're not aware of maybe we're different as well. Like you're not as young as you used to be, so you don't realize how harmful it is to other people. I remember being in a class, and one of the kids, one of the boys, like they's like, "Sheikh, come on." I'm like, "What?" He's asking me to move. Like, why do you want to move? And like, I don't get it. Like, there isn't anybody like even like slightly attractive in the room. He's a young boy and everything's attracted to him. So I don't even, and like, it's not like I can understand the context. He's like, he wants me to move, or doesn't want to sit here. And he's like, I don't get it. For him, it's like, oh my God, she's here. Like, I don't know who she is. I wouldn't even be able to guess who's attracted to. And so you have to be sensitive to other people's sensitivities, if that makes sense. Okay.
I'm sorry, mother. What is the أقسام الأربعة الأقسام صوت المرأة?
So we said basically mubah, she's talking. We said karaha, which is ughniya and Quran. And then
Yeah.
haram, which is her ta'deen, her calling the adhan.
Mhm.
So is it actually the case that it's haram to listen to her to call the adhan? I don't know. That's something else. But
Okay.
certainly for her to call the adhan is in the presence of men, particularly, is haram, right? Whether or not she calls the adhan by herself, that's somewhat debated. And I think I answered that some time ago. I don't know where it is. I'm not sure. Again, somebody, Jawad or Musa, if you can look in Bushra Kareem about the um, about the woman calling the adhan for Jama'at an-Nisa. Yeah, so in the south, same thing, Musa, in the north of England, right? You're at Love, it'd be like, so this lady just called me love, right? Uh, in the outskirts, where in like the country area of Swindon. Oh, sorry, in Devon, they would say, "You're right, my lover." That's what they say. They refer to you as my lover, right? So the person that I like. That's all. It doesn't mean anything. So again, somebody, different culture, different kind of thing. It does. Things do affect people. People are sensitive. Men and women are sensitive, right? Uh, وَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ, right? The wives of the Prophet ﷺ are told, don't soften your voices. right? Because it could be a fitna for people, right? So it's not like, oh, in their times everything was fine. No, it's just Bani Adam. We are humans. This is how we are. We are built to procreate. We're built like what happens when like I have two rabbits outside. The male, he's not, I don't think he's reached puberty yet, but he's already marking things. He rubs his neck on stuff, you know? He's just like marking things, You're just built to attract the opposite sex. So that's why. So you're built to be receptive to that as well, right? Attraction is the default, it's not the exception. The attraction is the default, right? That's the key thing to be aware of. Okay, so then he says, وتقيم المرأة ولا تؤذن ومن فاتته صلوات أو جمع بين صلاتين أذن وأقام للأولى وحدها وأقام للتي بعدها في الأصح. So there's two إقامas and one أذان. وفي القول الثاني لا يؤذن ولا يقيم. وفي القول الثالث أذن وأقام لكل واحد على حدة, not على حدة, على حدة. So by itself, right? على حدة from the word واحد. Right? One is hidda, which is from the word hadid, sharp, and the other one is hidda, right, by itself. وإذا لم يوجد من يتطوع بالأذان رزق الإمام, i.e. he pays his salary, من يقوم به وإن استأجر عليه جاز وقيل لا يجوز. One second here. What is he talking about here? وإن استأجر عليه. Here, and Khatib al-Sharbini mentions about the adhan of a woman. He says, وَلَا تُؤَذِّنُوا لأن في الأذان رفع الصوت الذي يخاف منه الفتنة بخلاف الإقامة فلو أذنت من غير رفع صوت. Number one, she didn't raise her voice. لنفسها أو للنساء لم يكره وكان ذكرا لله تعالى. Right? فلو رفعت فوق ما يسمع صواحبها حرم لأنه, yeah, so basically she shouldn't raising her voice, right? So this is forgive me, Sheikh Sameh. Whenever I have an Egyptian in my class, everything's funny, right? It's like Sarayan al-Hal, it's like have a, to some extent, we are as ridiculous as the Japanese. Like the Japanese, they have like, the samurai says, and she says, these have different ways of speaking. That to some extent, that's true, right? Obviously, in reality, a woman's gonna raise her voice at certain times. Khalas, we have all of us, we're all a work in progress, right? Alhamdulillah. But what I was going to say was, we're all a work in progress. But in theory, like, when should a woman raise her voice? Never. Right? There's no time. Like, a woman does not like she's praying by herself. She recites aloud, like Maghrib and Isha, but not as loud as men. So she's never as loud as men. Period. Like you shouldn't do that for the issue of fitna and for the issue of al-unutha, right? And so, khalas, what can you do? People do what they do. One of my friends in Jordan, he said, he's talking about not having too many kids and how like his aunt used to flip out. His aunt used to go crazy. Like the kids would go nuts. She would just like throw a rolling pin into the air and just like whoever it hits. Deal with it, right? And so, that's so just, people do things, and it's very important to understand how imperfect humans are in general, and men and women in specific, right? But in theory, when should you raise your voice as a woman? You shouldn't, So we're playing, I don't know, she's playing in the park, she's saying, "Hey, catch," and she's shouting like that's not feminine. That's not how we do things. A woman running in the street, it's not feminine. Right? Is it halal, haram? It's another discussion. But the surah is just not of unutha, right? The surah of a woman is satr, that she's covered, meaning you can't hear her and you can't see her, right? You know, that doesn't necessarily mean get back in the kitchen and make me some pie. That doesn't necessarily mean that. You could have significant women who are doctors, who are fuqaha teachers, but it's just the way you carry yourself. Like you're not loud and proud and in front of everybody. So yeah, I am the, hi, nice to meet you. Well, who is the, can a woman be, for example, the consultant? She's a, consultant cardiologist. Yeah, but how does she carry herself? There's a public speech. She doesn't want to do it unless she has to. She could be the Grand Mufti of a country. What's going to happen? What if she's the most knowledgeable person? But the way she carries herself is very different to a man, right? It's not what, but how, right? It's not what, but how. And people who see it, like, yeah, okay, I get it, right? Khair.
A quick question.
Go ahead, listener.
The first sentence باب الأذان وهو أفضل من الإمامة. I thought the معتمد is the إمامة is أفضل من الأذان. No?
Yeah, so maybe so again, Jawad and Musa, if you check in the Bushra Kareem, but I'm pretty sure that's not the case. Because here,
Sorry, what was the question?
is it true that the calling the adhan is better than imama, being the imam? So it says here, وهو إلى الأذان أفضل إمامة كما نص عليه الإمام الشافعي تعالى وصححه النووي في أكثر كتبه. Yeah. ويستحب لمن صلح للأذان والإمامة الجمع بينهما. So the idea that, for example, if you call the adhan, you don't lead the prayer is not true. Let's say, for example, Dr. Samih turns to some masjid, random masjid. He's in the Philippines, right? Nobody knows Arabic. All the pronunciation is off. Say, Habibi, I'll call the adhan and lead the prayer, not a problem. Or you're praying with doctors who are like this, and it's like, so the idea that we have to have somebody else to do it. A lot of these things are in people's heads, like it has to be like that. It's not necessarily the case. If you have the ability to do adhan properly, and you have the ability to pray properly, and nobody else does, of course, right? He mentioned there's a Hasan hadith on it in Tirmidhi. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, khair. Oh, we were reading about when istajara alayhi. Sorry, I got distracted. When istajara alayhi. So here, I get it. No, I don't get it. رزق الإمام من يقوم به فإن استأجر عليه جاز. Oh, I get it. Okay. So he says, if there's nobody to call the adhan, then the ruler, the imam, provides somebody, meaning from Bayt al-Mal. Okay? So وقال في المجموع Imam Nawawi says قال أصحابنا ولا يجوز أن يرزق مؤذنا وهو يجد متبرعا عدلا كما نص عليه. So somebody says, I will do it for free. I am reliable and I will do it for free. It says you cannot do that because now you're spending the public property, public money for no reason. فإن استأجر الإمام أو غيره عليه. So the issue is here the difference between the confusing thing is using the word razaqa and then he says the word istajara. So first of all, it's the same thing. And then first of all, he says he does that, and then he says if he does it, it's okay. So well, how could he do it otherwise? So anyway, the point is that's what he does, unless somebody's willing to do it for free and he's reliable. And then he says, is it permissible to be فإن استأجر الإمام أو غيره عليه أي الأذان? So now somebody hires somebody to call the adhan. You are a paid mu'adhin. Is that permissible to be a paid mu'adhin? Right? The answer is yes. Right? لأنه عمل معلوم. Right? So it's a right. right? So there's a hadith that says, اتخذ مؤذنا ولا يأخذ. So اتخذ مؤذنا ولا يأخذ على أذانه لا يأخذ على أذانه أجرا. Have a mu'adhin who does not get paid for calling the adhan. I.e. it is sunnah to do that. Right? So it is sunnah to call the adhan for free. Right? That is sunnah. So all things being equal, you have a job, khalas, I'm going to be the mu'adhin of this masjid for free. That's the sunnah. I don't have a job, I need the job, that's something else. Is it permissible? It is, because you are doing a service and it's a known service and you can be paid to do that. Right? And it could be combined with other things, right? Often the mu'adhin, he does other things as well, right? He's the mu'adhin, he opens and closes the door. He's in charge of this, in charge of that, right? He might clean, he might do all sorts of things. So it's when istajara alayhi jaz wa qil la yajuz, right? Because it's an act of worship. You can't pay somebody to make dua for you, right? I'm going to pay you, Dr. Sameh, to have khushu' and prayer. Can't, right? You can't do that. Right? So the exception is things like paying somebody to go on Hajj for you because you're now ma'adub, you are now incapable of doing of Hajj. That's something else, right? But otherwise, you can't pay somebody to do ibadah, right? So that's the problem there. Like, how could you pay? Number one, how could you pay somebody to do ibadah? Number two, there's a hadith that says have an mu'adhin that doesn't take ajran, that doesn't take a wage, right? So by that, we say that's mandub, right? It's recommended for that. Okay, this is Bab Satura Awrati. Inshallah, we'll come back to this next week. Okay, and let me stop here, inshallah, and we'll go on to the other books, inshallah.